Hello and welcome to Rewriting the Story. I'm really glad you decided to spend a little time with me today. This series is for anyone who has ever looked at their life and thought, something needs to change, but I'm not sure where to begin. We're not here to rush to an answer. We're here to think about the next steps together. I want to begin with a question. Have you ever had one of those moments where nothing around you looked different, but something inside of you kept saying, this doesn't feel the same anymore? Maybe you couldn't explain it. Maybe you tried to ignore it, but life kept still. The bills didn't need to be paid. You didn't depend, people didn't depend on you. You were still showing up, and from the outside, nothing looked different. But inside, something kept asking for your attention. I think most of us have lived these experiences from time to time. We often dismiss them because they don't seem important enough, or perhaps we convince ourselves that we're just tired. Maybe we even say, things will settle down after this week, after I get through this project, or the holidays, after the kids get older, or after I've retired. We become very good at postponing conversations with ourselves. Today, I want us to spend some time thinking about those moments. We're not trying to solve them. I just want us to kind of notice them. Sometimes the smallest shift in our thinking begins with a very different story. So I want to share a story with you. A woman I knew had done everything she believed she was supposed to do. She worked hard, treated people well, showed up when people needed her to. If someone called, she always answered. If there was a problem, she was the person that was going to solve it. People described her as dependable. She wore that word like it was the best compliment in the world. Then one afternoon, she'd left work and stopped at the grocery store. Nothing unusual, how we do. We go pick up a few things that she, needed. She smiled at the cashier. She loaded her bags in the car. And then when she got home, she parked in her driveway. Then she just sat there. 5 minutes passed. Then it was 10 minutes. She wasn't crying or anything. She wasn't angry. She just sat there. She wasn't even thinking about anything in particular. She just was sitting in her car. She just couldn't get out the car. Later, she told me that was the moment she realized something. Not because her life had fallen apart, it hadn't, but because she could no longer recognize the pace that she had been living. She said something I've never forgotten, and that was, I think I have been surviving a life that I worked very hard to build. I think I've been surviving a life that I worked very hard to build. That kind of struck me because she wasn't saying she was ungrateful for the life that she built. She wasn't even saying that anything needed to change, but she's been surviving this life that she worked very hard to build. And what that said to me was, I'm no longer the person that had been building this life, but I'm still continuing with the life as if that's who I am now, and I'm not that person. Now, I want us to think a moment about what happened, or what didn't happen, I guess I should say. She didn't quit her job, didn't move on, didn't make some dramatic announcement. Nothing visible changed that afternoon. The only thing that really changed was that she finally listened to something that she had been feeling for a long time. And that's sometimes where rewriting our story begins, not with the action, not even with certainty. Sometimes it begins when we finally stop arguing with ourselves. And I got to think about this because I want to be careful with how I say this, but this is not about deciding that everything in your life is wrong, because we're not saying this. It's not about walking away from your responsibilities. However, sometimes the life we built was exactly what we needed for all the seasons. But the story protected us. It helped us to survive. But the question now becomes is not whether that story was good or bad, it's whether it still fits us. It's like a piece of clothing. It fitted for a long time, but now I've lost some weight. So that dress, those pants, they don't fit me anymore. And that's a different conversation. I look at this as recognition. And sometimes when we recognize things in our life, it's not dramatic. It sounds like those pants don't fit me anymore. This life doesn't fit me anymore. Not because we failed or we chose poorly, but because we grew. Growth has a way of stretching us beyond the containers that once fit comfortably. Well, my friend said the next morning she received a text asking if she could take on one more responsibility. Now, normally she would have been like, sure. Instead, she said she looked at the message. She put her phone down. She made herself a cup of coffee. And she said she walked to the window. Then about 10 minutes later, she came back to her phone and then she answered the text and said, I need a little time before I can answer that. That was it. Now, for somebody reading the text, they probably wouldn't have thought anything about it, her response. But she said that was the first decision that she'd made in years that actually belonged to her. Now, I love that because nothing about it looked remarkable. There was no applause. Nobody was shouting from the rafters. Nobody even knew that her history had just shifted. She refused to let her yesterday answer today's question. When I thought about it, I really appreciated that she didn't know what was coming next. She didn't have a 5-year plan. She hadn't figured everything out. She was honest enough to just stop pretending that she had unlimited capacity. I think sometimes we underestimate moments like that. We want this dramatic breakthrough. But meanwhile, life quietly changes because someone finally paused before answering. So I want to leave you with something to think about this week. Not something to fix, just something to notice. Is there any place in your life where you've been answering today's question with yesterday's story? You don't have to change anything today. You don't have to make any decisions before you're ready. We just want to notice, Sometimes recognition is enough for one day. And it's really probably the bravest thing that we do. I want to thank you for spending this time with me. One of the things I hope you discover as we spend these weeks together is that Rewriting your story rarely begins with one dramatic moment. Most times, it begins with one honest thing. If today's conversation felt familiar, sit with it for a while. You don't have to rush towards an ending. You're allowed to spend time understanding where you are before deciding where you're going. I will meet you here again next time, and together we'll keep exploring what it looks like to rewrite your story, to rewrite the story we're living, one honest conversation at a time. And you know the drill. Before you go trying to take care of someone else, please make sure you take care of yourself first. Bye now.